This is just a introductory video on how to use a Google spreadsheet. Probably the first thing I should show you how to do is to change the name of the file. You don't want everything titled Untitled Spreadsheet because then it becomes really hard to find anything. So all you have to do is click on where it says Untitled Spreadsheet. It opens up a rename box. And change your file name to something you're going to remember what it's there for. Because you're going to have several spreadsheets in this Google Drive by the end of the semester. Alright, so say OK, and up here now this is for instruction. Alright, the second thing about spreadsheets is the main operating part is these cells down here. And each one of these cells has an address. Like this one here is A1. This one down here would be B4. And you can notice it kind of highlights the B up here and the 4 off to the side. So each one of these cells will have a specific address. This would be C6. Alright, and when you're entering things, you can type in text, and notice it kind of pushes it to the left, so this is known as a string. And if you type in a number like 34, it'll move it to the right-hand side, and that's a numeric value. And there's different ways of organizing this numeric value. Let's say it's like dollars. So up here at the top, you can change this to currency, so it'll change it into $34. If you hit the percent sign, it'll change it into its percent based on its decimal value. You'll be learning about this later. But when I hit the percent sign, it turns out to be 34,000. I'm sorry, 3,400. Alright, if you want to reduce how many decimal places are shown, you can use this button. So if you click it once, it removes one of the zeros. If you click it again, it makes it a whole number. If you click it again, it doesn't do a thing. This one over here will increase how many decimal values you see. So if you click it, it'll just give you more and more of the zeros. This one here you really shouldn't have to use. It has a lot of different options, but most of them you're not going to have to touch. The automatic setting is the one that's normal. Everything else for this class can be pretty much handled with those 4 buttons up there. Other things you could do if you want to make it fancy, you can bold it, italics, all that fun stuff. You can change the size of the font. I always find 10 to be too small. I like 12. I'm getting old, my eyes are getting bad. If you want to do it to more than one cell, or more than one cell, you can click and drag and select both of them. We can bold them both. We can make them both size 12, so they're nice and big. This button over here will give you borders. I like all borders personally. And that way when it prints out, you'll see these dark lines also around these boxes. These little gray lines, when you print them out, don't print out at all, so it'll just be white. So those are the basic formatting things. One thing you do have to get used to is the click and drag, so you can select cells to change them to be something you want or to add them into formulas. Alright, so the next thing, let's create a simple formula. Let's delete these two. Alright, notice the formatting stays in there, so we can get rid of that by just going here and clear borders. Alright, so let's say I wanted to do a little formula. Let's do something easy. Distance equals rate times time. So we'll make this rate, we'll make this time, and we'll set it equal to distance. So for instance, if you're driving at 55 miles per hour for 2 hours, to find out how far you've traveled, it would be rate times time equals distance. Escape for a second. Select them all. Click that little box up here in the corner. And I want them all to be 12. There we go. Alright, so let's start over with our formula. Sometimes you can go up to the top here. This is what's called the formula line. Or you can double click here to change your formula. Some people like doing this one up here. It's usually easier. Alright, so we want distance equals rate times time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say equals, click on the cell, and in the formula itself, it'll put the cell address, A3. And we want to multiply that, that's shift 8, would be time sign, by the time, which is 2 hours, and it automatically, when you click on it, puts in the B3. And when you hit enter, it gives you your answer of 110, which is how far you would travel if you were constantly doing 55 miles per hour over 2 hours. The nice thing about formulas is we can change the one value, and it changes the answer automatically. So for instance, if I change this cell into 1, it'll change it to 55. If I change it to 3, the answer changes to 165. If I go for a 10-hour trip, I'll have traveled 550 miles. So that's one of the cool things about spreadsheets and their formulas. If you change just one of the values, the formula changes it automatically. You don't have to go and do the calculator style of retyping everything in. All right, let's see, what else can we do? We can do a list. Let's delete these. Let's say we have a lot of numbers to deal with. We're going to be doing this later. We're going to be talking about, oops, let's go back to the beginning of that. Number of months. And we want to start off with 1. Now there's 2 ways of doing this. This could be the first month, this would be the second month, and we could keep typing them all in, but that gets kind of tiresome. So one way of dealing with this is if you select the first 2 cells, it has a pattern, 1 to 2, we would expect the next one to be 3, and so forth. If you select the first 2 of this pattern and grab that little box in the corner, this one right here, and drag it down, what it'll do is it'll try to continue the pattern of those first 2 cells. So it'll give you 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's one way of doing it. There's a problem with that, and I'll show you in a second. The other way of doing it is to say the first cell is equal to 1 and create a formula to come up with the 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're going to say equals the cell above it plus 1. And that way it's going to increase it by 1. So if I just grab this one cell, what happens when you drag just one cell with a formula in it is kind of cool. It takes this B2, and as it moves to this cell below it, it'll change it to B3 plus 1. So it'll look back up here and say, well, that one's equal to 2, and force this one to equal 3. So if I drag it down one cell, it changes it to 3. So now it's B3 plus 1, and if I drag it one more, it should turn into B4 plus 1. So if we move down here, B4 plus 1. And you can drag that for as long as you want. And it'll just keep increasing 1 plus the previous number. And you can do that a lot of different ways. You can go times 2, so it doubles it all the time. It's kind of a neat idea. Now the difference between these two is, let me get rid of those. If I take these 2 cells and drag them down, what it'll do is try to copy the formulas down. And what will happen is this one will just copy what was in that cell, which is 8, and this one will continue adding 1, which is basically what I want it to do when I drag down and copy. So this one is neat for pattern building, but it doesn't work real well for continuing that pattern building, where the formula does it automatically. Much nicer to work with. All right. So I want to use this idea here, and I'm going to drag it down until it gets to 30. So let's see here, where's 30? 28, 29, 30. I saw this on Facebook. My wife loves Facebook. That you save $1 the first day, $2 the next day, $3 the next day, and so forth. So if we do that, basically what I want to do is I want to copy the same formula. So 1 equals the cell above it plus 1. And also about this column, I want to change it to money. So I'm going to select the entire column C, and I want to change it all into money. So on the first day, $1, on the second day, $2, and so forth and so on. So I can drag that formula down, and we'll get down to $30. And what I want to do is I want to see how much money it accumulates as we do this kind of savings plan. So this will be equal to the first cell, On the first day, you saved $1. This one is going to equal how much you had before, plus, so I'm just selecting the cell I want to talk about, and then just, continuing on with the formula, plus the new $2 that I've gotten. So now all of a sudden my total is $3. Now I have the formula in sight, but sometimes you have to go one more cell, so I'm just going to go one more cell. So it's going to be equal to the $3 I've already saved, plus the $3 I'm going to deposit on the third day. And that becomes 6. So what I can do is drag this formula down, see how much money I will have saved by the end of the month. And this gives you $465. Not a bad savings plan. But that's how these formulas work really powerful. Say you wanted to start off with $10 and build up from there. So you can just change this first cell to 10. And what will happen is the next cell will turn automatically into 11, 12, 13. And then we can start off with $10 a month, and then by the end we'll have saved $735. If we wanted to start off with $1 and then increase it by 5 every time, we can go back up here and change it into $5. So if you start off with $1 the first day, the next day you add $5 to your deposit, and then you're up to 6, and so forth and so on. So that'll change the first cell, but it doesn't change the ones after because we haven't touched the formula +1. So here this one has the +5, but this one is +1. So we're going to have to change all the formulas below it to increase it by 5. So now we're talking about saving $6, then $11, and $16, and $21. But this side is still working perfectly fine. If you double click, you can see where the cells are coming from. The $18 plus the $16 for a total of $34. By the end of the month here, the last day you're putting $146 away. Not many people could do that. But at the end you get $2,000. So that's kind of the cool thing about dragging formulas. Now these are ones that we want the cells to change. There are some that we want to kind of just reference back to the beginning. So another way of doing this is, let's say we wanted to save $5 a day. So I'll put a 5 in here. I'll change it to dollars. If we want to save $5 a day, so the first day it's going to equal, the $5. The second day it's going to equal, this cell above it, plus that $5. In other words, I don't want to have a whole column of just $5 all the way down and then add it up. I want to keep referencing this F1. So to do that, I'm going to click on that cell, and then while it's sitting here, I'm going to hit F4. And what F4 does is it puts these dollar signs in there. And what those dollar signs mean is to hold that $5 at the very top fixed. So when I hit enter, it'll change it to 10. And when I drag it down one more cell, it should be 15. And when you look at the formula, it's the one above it, F3, plus the one at the very top, the $5. So this way, I can just have that $5 listed once and just keep adding it to the cell above. So it becomes 20, 25, 30. And when we look at this one, we're talking about F6, the one above it, and then that dollar sign F1 way at the top is held fixed at $5. So fixed cells comes in kind of handy, especially for formulas where you want that one value to hold still. A new sheet here. Now to create a new sheet, there's this little plus at the very bottom left-hand corner, way over here. If you click it, it'll add on another sheet. I already had a sheet 1, but that's some other garbage. So here we are on sheet 3. If you want to name your sheets, you can, how do you rename this? There we go. You double click on it. So I can call this another. And it'll change the name of it. That way you can organize your sheets also. Now, other than that though, let's look at something else. Let's say we're trying to add up a bunch of numbers. So, 12, 34, 54, 67, 79, 43, 21, and 78. All right, now one way of doing this, and I never like doing it in the cell right below the numbers, I always skip one to show that this one's going to do something different. And what I want to do to it is I want to add up all the numbers above it. So another built-in thing about spreadsheets is they come with what's known as functions. And the one we want is sum of a series of numbers or cells. Now it comes up with all these other ones. They're not usually necessary for us, but it does come up with all the possibilities, and sometimes you want to be able to see all of them. But in this case, we just want sum. So there's two ways of doing it. You can type the parentheses, the lead-off parentheses, or you can click the formula you want. When you do, it gives you a nice little explanation of how it works. So here you say sum, it gives you the first parentheses. They want the first value, or all of the values, or a list of the values. So one way of doing this is, since I want the sum of these numbers here, is I'm going to click the first one, and I'm going to hold it down and drag through the rest of them. Now it says A1 colon AB. Basically that means A1 through not AB, A8. So A1 through A8, we want to add up all those numbers. Now if you hit enter here, it'll give you the sum, but it's better if you end the parentheses to see what happens. It shows you that those two parentheses go together. A lot of formulas are going to be kind of lots of parentheses. And hit enter and it adds them all up. Now if you're doing this on a calculator, adding all the numbers up, and you realized you typed in 67 wrong, you transposed it, and it was supposed to be 76, you'd have to go back through and add up all the numbers. So what's nice about spreadsheets is if you mistyped 67 and it should have been 76, is you can just go back and type it in, and it changes the sum automatically without doing any recalculations. Another formula that we might want to get used to is average. So it gives you these averages, but you just want the first one. And again, you want to just drag through all those numbers. And then here I'm just going to hit enter. And it gives you the average of all those numbers. And again, if you change like the first one, maybe I should have typed in 25, but for some reason my fingers were weird. I can change the 12 into 25, and it will change the sum, and it will change automatically the average. So it pops these two into different numbers. So now this is the sum of these numbers, and this is the average of these numbers. And you can keep on doing that. We can make this 100, and the average will change drastically, and so will the sum. And that is one of the main beauties of spreadsheets. One last thing about spreadsheets, and this is kind of important because I'm going to have you submit some of these documents to me through Google. So the way you're going to do it is, after you have your spreadsheet all set and you have your numbers and formulas all the way you want them to be, go to File. After you click on File, go down to where it says Download As, and the file submission that I want is Microsoft Excel. Please do not use any of the others. This is the one you want to use. So if you click on Microsoft Excel here, it'll download your file. Mine automatically opens up. I'm going to stop that. And wherever your download files are, this is Google Chrome. I never really use this too much. There's usually a download folder. You can click on that, and it gives you this nice list. Now if it's Firefox, up in this top right hand corner, it gives you a nice little arrow to work with. And if I remember right, sometimes with Chrome it shows up here in the bottom of this sheet, but for some reason it's not in this case. So I'll go to the download folders. Where is it? Downloads. And find that file. I'm also going to open up, let me back this up, my Moodle page. And I'm going to go in as a student. Maybe not. And one of the first things you're going to put in is a stock project. And no, I'm going to have to see myself as a student. Switch role to student. And you're going to be adding a submission. And when you're adding a submission, it wants you to either drop and drag or search for your file. This would be the button if you want to add a file. It'll open up a browser window. You would choose file and so forth and so on. I find that kind of tricky, so I like the drop and drag first. So I'm going to go to my downloads. I'm going to kind of separate it away. And I want this file. So I'm going to drop and drag. And when you move it over to this file, this is a Mac. Windows will work a little bit different, but it should work similar. And I'm going to just drop it in here. The file should be usually green for spreadsheets, and it has that nice little X to represent Excel. And then all you have to do is hit Save Your Changes. And it'll submit it to me. I can look at it. I could leave comments for you. Make sure when you go back and look at your submission, you can also send me a comment about things. Just make sure you hit Save Comment before you hit Edit Submission. All right, and that's about it.